So speaking about learnings, things that you've learned over life, I'm going to ask you the deep question. What is the biggest misstep you've made in your life that's provided you the greatest learning?
Man, there's been so many of them. I have made 10 million mistakes in my life. I do remember a particular, I was 35, so it was 2005, and I was running a successful plumbing company. Things were going incredibly well. I just a couple years previous had bought the acreage that I live on now. That was going phenomenal. I had another business venture that was just, without going into too many details, we were doing $25 million a year.
Woo, baby.
So I'm like, man, I literally said to myself, I can see myself and hear the words. I'm like, I have made it. I
Yes.
am king of the world. There's nothing that I can't handle, and there's nothing I can't do. I have the Midas touch. My life is like, it's just, and it wasn't, it wasn't to anybody. I was just one of those moments where I'm
Yep.
like, damn the haters. I've got it all figured out. There's no problem I can't solve. And then within 18 months, I had a business partner that made some really bad decisions and was a bit dishonest. And so that venture dried up within 6 months. Was gone, bankrupt, over. And then 6 months after that, my father got a cancer diagnosis and passed away. So that was 2005. And by the end of 2006, my dad was gone. My lucrative business was gone. And it was, from here to here. I'm like, I know nothing. It was a really, I was really angry for a really long time. And it took me a couple of years to sort of work through all that craziness of, dealing with family. And I don't wish it upon anybody, but when a business goes sideways, like there's a lot of garbage you get to deal with for a long time, lawyers and all sorts of crap. And so it was 2 or 3 years of just me being miserable and unhappy, and plumbing sucked because it was just, it was now the shackle that I was tied to try and fix my life. And that's when I started to take a step back and just look at the world through a different lens. It was shocking to me. Maybe the biggest shock was that nobody cared. Not that nobody cared, but it was like, hey man, sorry about that. Hope it goes well. My furnace isn't working. You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Reality.
Like, it was reality. Like I was like, dude, don't you care? Like I'm literally, bleeding inside, dying inside, and you're like, your toilet doesn't work. Who the F cares?
Yes, I got bigger problems than your damn toilet.
Right?
Yes.
And so that was sort of the misstep, I guess, is thinking that I had it all figured out. That my life, like there was no more problems because I had money, I had, everything was going exactly how it should have gone. And, I don't know, God in heaven said, dude, that dude's you get a bit thick in the head. So we're going to bring him back to reality, which is exactly what happened. And so it was, you never know everything. There's always another problem. That's what life is dealing with people and dealing with problems. Everybody has their own problems, and they may be sympathetic to yours, which is what I'm trying to say is like, yeah, I'm really sorry that happened to you, but I have my own problems. And so it was just trying to figure out how that jigsaw put back together when things weren't going the way they were supposed to go. It's not a thing that you can pivot on, right? Like, this happened, and now I'm going to go do this. It was like I say, 3 or 4, maybe even 5 year. And there's still those seeds of being angry and upset about everything that went sideways. But that's part of what we talked about at the beginning, is just taking some of that stuff back and just being like, you know what, the world's actually amazing.
Yes.
And my kids are amazing. My life is amazing. Sure, it's not I'm not king of the world and I haven't got it all figured out. And so there's, you know, if I had to put it into a phrase, would be, you know, be humble. That was my biggest misstep, is not being humble and thinking, I don't need to be humble. What are you talking about? I can do anything.
Yeah.
And for 2 years I could do anything I wanted. And then it just sort of all, you know, eroded. And so I think one of the biggest keys to life is to be humble, and whatever your circumstances are, whether they're good or bad, because whether they're good or bad, they're going to change, and maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. Whatever it is, it's not an infinite change. Like you say, you've lived long enough to know that that's what it does: up and down, up and down, up and down. And you just have to navigate this life with both hands on the steering wheel, is what I've learned. Instead of just sort of cruising back with one hand over it, you gotta two-hand it, and it's a bit frantic. So yeah,
that's a pretty intimate, I'm sure, painful thing to bring back to the front of your mind. My condolences for your loss, but I think be humble, keep two hands on the steering wheel. Like, it's so easy not to do that. It's so easy to start celebrating how amazing and miraculous Jesse is, and then boom, something comes and get me squared up again. Like, hey, dummy, don't forget, I wish I knew this earlier, like in my 20s, even 30s. I undervalued the relationships that I had. And so when things were going well, I was neglectful and maybe even abusive with the people that really cared about me. I took them for granted entirely. And then when I got those reality checks, I'm pissed because they're not there coddling me. Well, of course not, because I was a jerk to them. And it's those relationships, the relationships that we build, that are going to get us through. They're there with us in the hard times, they're there with us in the high times. But in order to nurture those relationships, it takes humility. Love the answer, and I appreciate you sharing that with us.